Salvatore Riina was born into a family of farmers in Corleone on November 16, 1930, the second of 6 children. His father, Giovanni, worked on the estate of Baron Guglielmo Inglese, while his mother, Maria Concetta Rizzo, struggled to support the family after Giovanni's death when Salvatore was just 13 years old. Salvatore, also known as Toto, experienced tragedy at a young age when his father and younger brother Francesco were killed in a botched attempt to extract gunpowder from a projectile. Growing up in poverty and facing the loss of his father and brother, Riina turned to a life of crime. He joined the gang led by Luciano Liggio, engaging in theft and violence. Riina's criminal activities escalated when he was indirectly involved in the murder of labor unionist Placido Rosado in 1948. A year later, Riina shot and killed a fellow teenager during a brawl, leading to his first arrest and eventual conviction for murder. Sentenced to prison at the age of 19, Riina's time behind bars marked a turning point in his life. Initially rebellious, he eventually became a model prisoner, even pursuing education while incarcerated. However, upon his release, Riina returned to a life of crime, rejoining Liggio's gang and becoming involved in illegal activities such as cattle rustling and meat trafficking. Riina's criminal career took a dramatic turn in the late 1950s when Liggio orchestrated a violent conflict with rival mafia factions in Corleone. Riina played a significant role in the ensuing bloodshed, which claimed the lives of over 100 people. Despite his involvement, Riina managed to evade capture until 1963 when he was arrested by police. In the following years, Riina faced multiple legal challenges, including a high-profile trial in which he was acquitted due to insufficient evidence. However, authorities continued to pursue him, leading to his arrest and subsequent escape from custody. Riina's flight from justice marked the beginning of nearly 24 years as a fugitive, during which he rose to become one of the most powerful and feared figures in the Sicilian mafia. Salvatore Riina's early life and criminal beginnings offer a glimpse into the complex web of poverty, violence, and corruption that fueled the rise of organized crime in Sicily. His story serves as a stark reminder of the enduring influence of the mafia and the challenges faced by law enforcement in combating organized crime. Salvatore Riina, known as Toto, is one of the most obscure and feared figures in the history of Sicilian mafia. His name is linked to a series of heinous crimes that have bloodied the Sicilian land for decades, contributing to defining the most raw and brutal face of organized crime. Born in Corleone in 1930, Riina grew up in a context of poverty and violence. His family, of humble peasant origins, saw him involved in criminal activities from a young age, making his way into the local underworld through his connections with the Luciano Liggio gang. His rise was marked by a series of murders, extortions, and kidnappings, which made him emerge as a prominent figure within the Corleone clan. One of the most dramatic moments of his criminal career was the Viale Lazio massacre in 1969, where Riina lost his accomplice Calogero Bagarella, brother of his girlfriend, while attempting to eliminate the boss Michele Cavateo. This event marked the beginning of a series of vendettas and murders that would shake the world of Sicilian crime. Riina also stood out for his role in kidnappings and murders commissioned by the mafia, which aimed not only to obtain wealth, but also to eliminate potential rivals and political opponents. His power and bloody ferocity made him a reference point for other criminal families, extending his influence not only to Corleone, but also to Palermo and other cities in Sicily. His rise to power was marked by rivalry with other mafia bosses, such as Gaetano Badalamenti and Stefano Bontate, who sought to counter his hegemony over the Sicilian mafia. This rivalry escalated into a veritable war between clans, causing hundreds of deaths and profound destabilization of the entire region. But Riina's brutality and determination knew no bounds. He ruthlessly eliminated his enemies and those who dared to challenge him, consolidating his dominance over organized crime. His close relationship with corrupt political figures and his ability to infiltrate institutions made him even more dangerous, fueling his power and impunity. However, his hegemony came to a violent end. In 1993, after almost 24 years on the run, Riina was finally captured by law enforcement, ending one of the darkest chapters in the history of Italian mafia. But his legacy of blood and terror would leave an indelible mark on Sicily and future generations, reminding everyone of the devastating cost of organized crime. After the outbreak of the Second Mafia War, cousins Ignazio and Nino Salvo, wealthy and renowned tax collectors affiliated with the Salemi clan, sided with the Corleonesi faction, led by Riina. They were tasked with managing relations with Salvo Lima, who became Riina's new political liaison, primarily to seek favorable resolutions to legal matters. Lima's alleged involvement in attempting to influence the outcome of the Palermo Maxi trial verdict, which sentenced Riina and numerous other bosses to life imprisonment, further solidified his ties with Riina. According to testimonies from collaborators, Lima reportedly worked to sway the Court of Cassation's decision regarding the Maxi trial verdict. Baldassare Di Maggio, a collaborator, recounted accompanying Riina to Ignazio Salvo's house in Palermo in 1987, where they purportedly met Lima and his political rival Giulio Andreotti to solicit their intervention in the trial's outcome. However, the credibility of this account was questioned during Andreotti's trial, leading to the dismissal of the testimony. The court ruled Andreotti guilty only up until 1980, indicating a severance of ties with Cosa Nostra leaders with the rise of the Corleonesi and the adoption of a stringent anti-mafia stance. In the meantime, Riina ascended to the position of Capo dei Capi, boss of bosses, after Michel Greco's arrest in February 1986, a significant development that further consolidated Riina's power within the mafia hierarchy. These intricate alliances and political entanglements underscored the extent of mafia influence within Italian society and its attempts to manipulate legal proceedings and political figures for its own ends. Riina's rise to the pinnacle of the mafia hierarchy marked a shift in power dynamics within Cosa Nostra, with ramifications that extended beyond the realm of organized crime. In the wake of the confirmation of life sentences for the defendants in the Maxi trial by the Cassation Court on January 30, 1992, and the validation of the testimonies provided by collaborator of Justice Tommaso Buscetta, Riina decided to send a warning to Andreotti. This action was prompted by Andreotti's apparent lack of interest in the trial's outcome and his signing of a decree law that resulted in the reincarceration of defendants who had been released pending trial and those under house arrest. Consequently, on March 12, 1992, Eurodeputy Lima was assassinated on the eve of the general elections, followed by the killing of Ignazio Salvo several months later. The revelations made by justice collaborators, notably Tommaso Buscetta and Francesco Marino Manoia, triggered Cosa Nostra's retaliation. Acting on Riina's orders, the heads of the families were authorized to eliminate the relatives of the informants up to the 20th degree of kinship, including children and women, as seen in the 1989 massacre of Marino Manoia's family. In early July 1992, attorney Cristoforo Fleccia, a longtime defender of Riina, made headlines with an interview on TGR, stating that his client was in Sicily and met him often. These claims led to an investigation into Fleccia for aiding and abetting. During the summer of 1992, Riina orchestrated a series of terrorist attacks against the Italian state, beginning with the Capaci bombing on May 23, 1992, which claimed the lives of Judge Giovanni Falcone, his wife Francesca Morvillo, and their escort officers. This was followed by the Via D'Amelio bombing on July 19, 1992, resulting in the deaths of Magistrate Paolo Borsellino and his escort. The subsequent year saw devastating bombings in Rome, Florence, and Milan, targeting Italy's artistic heritage and resulting in the deaths of 10 people, including 2 children, and injuring over 100. When objections were raised by other members about the bombings potentially harming innocent civilians, Riina callously responded, "In Sarajevo, many children die. Why should we worry?" In early June 1992, and in the months following, Mario Mori, the then vice commander of the ROS Carabinieri, engaged in negotiations with former Mayor Vito Ciancimino, proposing a deal with Cosa Nostra to end the wave of bombings plaguing Palermo. Mori later claimed that these contacts were part of a trap to apprehend Riina and Provenzano. According to the accounts of Giovanni Brusca and Salvatore Cansami, Riina responded with the Papello, a list of demands, including the closure of prisons in Pianosa and Asanara, a revision of the Maxi trial verdict, and the abolition of Article 41 bis and life imprisonment. The existence of a state mafia negotiation was subsequently confirmed by various court rulings and the testimonies of numerous pentiti and state officials. On January 15, 1993, Riina was captured by Crimer, the special unit of ROS led by Sergio DiCaprio, known as Captain Ultimo, found with a false identity card under the name Giuseppe Bellomo. After evading capture since 1969, he was apprehended at the first intersection in front of his villa in Via Bernini in 54, Palermo, along with his driver Salvatore Biondino. Riina had spent approximately 10 years of his fugitive life in the villa with his wife Antonetta Bagarella and their children, regularly paying rent and bills. The arrest was facilitated by statements made by Riina's former driver Baldassare Balduccio Di Maggio to General Francesco Delfino, who had decided to collaborate in retaliation against Cosa Nostra, which had sentenced him to death. Di Maggio played a crucial role in identifying Riina, as there were only a few photographs of him dating back to 1969. On March 1, 1993, Riina made his first public appearance after his arrest during a hearing for the Mattarella Ranello murder trial, in which he was a defendant. In front of the judges, he claimed to be the victim of a conspiracy orchestrated by so-called pentiti, mafia turncoats, and even denied being part of Cosa Nostra, likening himself to the well-known TV presenter Enzo Tortora. He also requested and obtained to confront his main accusers, justice collaborators Giuseppe Marchesi and Gaspar Mutolo. These confrontations gained national visibility as they were broadcast on the Rai 3 TV program, Un Giorno in Pretura, A Day in Court. However, Riina initially requested and then refused to confront Tommaso Buscetta in the courtroom, claiming that Buscetta was of lower moral standing than him. Since December 1995, Riina has been imprisoned in the maximum security prison on the island of Asinara, Sardinia. He was later transferred to the prison of Marino del Tronto, in Ascoli Piceno, where, for about 3 years, he was subjected to the strict prison regime known as 41 bis, reserved for mafia offenders. However, on March 12, 2001, his isolation was revoked, effectively allowing him the opportunity to interact with other inmates during the hour of exercise. While under the 41 bis regime, on May 24, 1994, during a break in the first-degree trial in Reggio Calabria for the murder of Judge Antonino Scopoliti, Riina was approached by Michele Carlino, journalist from a video agency, Med Media News. He issued threatening statements against the chief prosecutor of Palermo, Giancarlo Caselli, and other representatives of institutions and culture, including Luciano Violante, then president of the Anti-Mafia Commission, and sociologist Pino Arlacchi. Riina accused them of being part of an alleged communist plot against him and complained about the harsh conditions imposed by the strict prison regime. Riina's intervention led to a disciplinary proceeding by the Superior Council of the Judiciary against public prosecutor Salvatore Bomi, who was accused of failing to supervise the prisoner. Shortly after Riina's statements, the 41 bis regime, which was initially valid for only 3 years, was strengthened through various legislative interventions aimed at making it renewable on an annual basis. In March 2003, Riina underwent heart surgery due to cardiac problems, and in May of the same year, while in the prison of Ascoli Piceno, he suffered a heart attack. He was subsequently transferred to the Mazzina Hospital in Teramo, where he underwent coronary angioplasty. Later in 2003, in September, he was hospitalized again for cardiac issues. His lawyers requested house arrest, but the judges deemed his health conditions compatible with the prison regime. On May 22, 2004, during the trial in Florence for the Via dei Giorgafili bombing, Riina accused the involvement of secret services in the Capaci and Via d'Amelio bombings. He also mentioned contacts between then-Colonel Mario Mori and Vito Ciancimino, through Ciancimino's son Massimo, who was not called to testify at the time. After being transferred to the Opera prison, Riina was hospitalized again in 2006, this time at San Paolo Hospital in Milan, due to cardiac problems. In August 2013, intercepted conversations revealed Riina expressing his desire to kill Nino Di Matteo and other magistrates involved in the state mafia negotiation process. This led to enhanced security measures for Di Matteo. However, doubts arose regarding the authenticity of the conversation, with speculation suggesting Riina may have deliberately sent a message to his associates. In 2017, Riina's lawyers requested a deferment of his sentence to house arrest due to his deteriorating health. The request was denied by the court, stating that Riina could receive adequate medical care in prison. Despite a subsequent request for reconsideration by the cassation, emphasizing Riina's right to a dignified death, the decision remained unchanged. Riina's health rapidly declined, and he was transferred to Maggiore Hospital in Parma, where he underwent 2 surgical interventions. He slipped into a coma on November 11, 2017, and passed away at 3:37 a.m. on November 17, 2017, the day after his 87th birthday, in the hospital's inmate ward. Following his death, an autopsy was performed to rule out any suspicion of foul play, confirming natural causes. Riina, known as the Boss of Bosses, was buried in the cemetery of Corleone after spending 24 years in prison, serving 26 life sentences. The convictions imposed on Toto Riina over the years constitute a dark chronicle of the violence and ferocity of the mafia in Italy. Riina's judicial journey has been marked by a long series of trials and convictions, testament to the extent and gravity of the crimes committed by the so-called Boss of Bosses of Cosa Nostra. From the early years of his criminal career, Riina faced trials for criminal association and drug trafficking, which marked his entry into the justice system's radar. The initial convictions, as in the trial of the 114, focused on organizational crimes, but over time his criminal responsibilities expanded to include numerous murders and extremely serious massacres. One of the crucial moments in his judicial journey was the Maxi trial of Palermo in 1987, where Riina was sentenced to life imprisonment in the first instance as the instigator of a series of crimes including murders of magistrates, politicians, and other law enforcement members. This conviction was just one of many he would face in the following years. His criminal responsibilities were confirmed by a series of subsequent trials, which saw him convicted of an impressive number of murders and attempted murders, including those of important institutional figures such as Paolo Borsellino, Piersanti Mattarella, and many others. Each sentence, each conviction, represented a victory for justice and for those who fight against organized crime in Italy. However, Riina's judicial journey was long and tortuous, characterized by appeals, and new trials that highlighted the complexity and vastness of his criminal activities. His death in 2017 closed a dark chapter in the history of Italian crime, but his memory and criminal legacy will remain vivid for a long time, testifying to Italian society's determination to fight the mafia and ensure that those who commit such serious crimes are held accountable for their actions before the law. Toto Riina's life was intimately intertwined with that of Ninetta Bagarella, his lifelong companion. The two met in the 1950s in Corleone, during the war between the factions of Legio and Novara, which ended favorably for the Legio faction. After completing her diploma, Ninetta decided to marry Toto. On April 16, 1974, Toto Riina married Antonetta Bagarella, known as Ninetta, in a ceremony officiated by Don Agostino Coppola di Carini in the gardens of Cinasai. However, the marriage was not legally valid as it was not registered in the civil registry. The wedding was attended by notable figures such as Luciano Legio and Bernardo Provenzano. Despite being a fugitive, Riina organized a honeymoon trip with Ninetta, spending a week in Naples, then visiting Monte Cassino and finally Venice, where they stayed for 3 to 4 days. After the ceremony, Riina and Ninetta went into hiding in a villa in the Pallavicino district of Palermo. It was not until more than 20 years later, after Riina's capture, that they sought to legalize their marriage, when Ninetta and their children moved to Corleone. The couple had 4 children: Maria Concetta, 1974, Giovanni Francesco, Giuseppe Salvatore, 1977, and Lucia, 1980, all born in a clinic in Palermo. One of Riina's nephews, Giovanni Grisefi, the son of his sister Caterina, passed away in the summer of 2023 from an incurable illness. Giovanni Francesco Riina was sentenced to life imprisonment for 4 murders committed in 1995. Giuseppe Salvatore Riina was initially convicted of mafia association, but was released on February 29, 2008, after serving 8 years in prison. On October 2, 2011, after completing his sentence of 8 years and 10 months, he was released again under house arrest in Corleone. Rumors began to circulate about his involvement in planning an attack against former Minister of Justice Angelino Alfano, following the tightening of the 41 bis regime.